The year was 1985. I just graduated high school at Westside High School back in Gary, Indiana, and I was starting my freshman year at Purdue University. My brother Michael and his family happened to live just off of campus. So one day, my brother Michael was talking about some comic book ideas he had. Really big into comic books. Love them. Matter of fact, I've collected, and I've actually even drew up a comic book for a guy for Independent. Nothing really happened with it, but still, it was kind of fun. It was something that we had to bond with. So anyway, my brother Michael told me this idea. One of his ideas was about this alien police officer who came to Earth. The character wasn't going to be your typical superhero type where he was really big and muscular. He actually wanted to be very thin, kind of, tiny in frame. And I always kind of pictured him kind of like a Bruce Lee build. But this character was also very strong. And once again, it was supposed to be like a police officer. So, over the years, I've drawn up things about this character. Unfortunately, never got into the comic book business. I mean, now I teach karate full time, so I guess my life is still pretty good, But anyway, today I'm going to honor the memory of my brother Michael and my mother too. My brother Michael passed away March of 2020, and my mother passed away March 2021. Fortunately, I was able to get to Indianapolis and say goodbye to my brother Michael, and get to Gary the following year and say goodbye to my mother. But with that being said, we're going to introduce the character my brother Michael created. Right there. So, he just gave me a rough idea of what he wanted, and I kind of always played with it. And I came up with the name for the character, Rimka, which would translate into basically police officer. Hey, there you go. Now, I got the name from one of my guilty pleasures. When I was in the Army, saw the movie Gymkhana, which was supposed to be the world's most deadliest martial art, a combination of gymnastics and karate. Gymkhana. That's where I came up with the name. I also came up with the character's name, Nim Karat. Okay, so this was the main character. And the police officers would earn their colors. In other words, once they got to a certain point, they would have these different markings. For instance, these stripes represented how many generations their family were Rimka. Another thing my brother wanted was something with their hair, something genetic. So I came up with every Rimka would have a white stripe. Also, on the left arm, thinking like a martial artist, would be like a gauntlet for protection. One of the typical techniques, if you are being attacked by a knife or whatever, take your jacket, wrap it around your least dominant arm, and use your dominant arm to fight off your opponent. The Rimka's weapon of choice is this club. We call it a Bonfi. Now the Bonfi, it's not an energy weapon. It's just like something like a martial artist would use escrimas. But the Rimka is supposed to be like the preeminent martial artist in the galaxy, so they can do all kinds of really cool things with them. Also, part of the Bonfi is this little strap, which I called an inertia damper. And they would pull it off the Bonfi, they could throw it at whatever, and it would wrap around them, and it would actually expand. And the more you move, the tighter it would hold you. Even if you were just breathing, even just like shallow breathing, it would go off of motion. So then it would read it as such and keep you tight. So Michael's idea was he came to Earth. He didn't really have a reason why he came to Earth. And when he got to Earth, basically headlights of a car were coming up on him. He was in like a remote area, and he turns and strikes the car, almost destroying it. And there was a woman in it, and he ended up saving her, and that was his connect. She would help him learn about Earth. But I wasn't going to go along the idea that he would stay on Earth and fall in love and all that stuff like they typically did in comic books. He was already married. He just came after this creature who happened to kill one of his trainees. Now the creatures, I've played with many names, but I called it a Ymir, also a Nightfall beast. Now the creature was, all kind of cute and cuddly, only about 2 inches in height. But what these beings did over centuries is they adapted the ability to mentally pull like dust, dirt, anything out of the air around them and create shells. So they weren't shapeshifters. They actually just manipulated their surroundings to create shells for them. And they could look, like different people, different creatures, things like that. But what made them even more interesting was the shell had no skeletal structure, no muscular structure. It actually tied into their mind. So that's how they moved the outer shell. And you could strike it, but because it was so tied into their brains, it felt like pain to them. So you had this they could make these big shells, and it'd be like a little guy floating right there in the middle. And the idea was they made themselves so frightening looking for protection and to strike fear in other creatures. So the Rimka basically almost wiped out these beings. And like I said, Nimkarat came chasing after one that killed one of his trainees, even though he was ordered not to come to Earth because Earth wasn't part of, this galactic union or whatever. But he did it anyway. So, like I said, unfortunately, never really fully developed it, never got a chance to do a comic book. I don't think I've ever even shown my brother Michael a sketch, which is sad because it was a really good idea. And he really loved comic books. But, and the funny thing too is my mother, being typical mom, she's like, oh, you can't make money drawing comic books, do something else, blah, 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 blah. But what was funny was when I joined the Army, my mother went into my bedroom, and I used to draw my own little comic books, especially with my buddy Carlton Hargrove. We used to do our own little stories and stuff like that, and every month we'd bring out our stories. I still say Carlton's Super Carl and Wildcat Ronnie was the best, especially when they took everybody from the neighborhood and we fought the Sisterhood of Evil. That's another story. That's a story from another time. But anyway, my mother, she years later, she told me she read everything that I did and loved it. But like I said, things happen. You become a parent, jobs, all that fun stuff. But you know what? I can't complain. I have a wonderful life. Like I said, I get to teach karate full time. So, can't complain. But, all in all, I really wish my brother, my mother were still around. I think that, especially Michael, he would just love everything that's come out these days. Moon Knight, all that. He would have been like the Mandalorian. He would have been like a kid, in a candy shop. But that was one of the ideas my brother Michael had. And, to honor his memory, there you go. The first time anyone outside of pretty much my head learned the story, seen the pictures of Rimka. One of the greatest comic book ideas that unfortunately never developed. Anyway, I miss you, Mom. I miss you, Michael. Love you guys.